This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to unpack the savings opportunities or the ways you can save money. That is to say, when you switch to variable speed pump. And I think this has been talked about before, but I think I'm going to take this or tackle this from a slightly different angle than you've heard before. If you're looking to expand your pool service or get support out in the field, or if you just want one-on-one coaching, join my coaching program with over 270 members and growing. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. I will say that some of the manufacturer claims are a little far-fetched, 80% on energy savings with the VS pump. Yes, that can be achieved, but it has to be a lot of optimal things for this to happen. And we live in, of course, an area, at least I do in Southern California, where things aren't very optimal. In other words, the energy rates are always rising. They're always raising your kilowatt per hour rate. And that's the key to saving money on a variable speed pump, is how much you pay per kilowatt hour. Because technically you're not isolating the variable speed pump. It's one component among many that your house is running, especially in the summertime. You have your air conditioner, you have the variable speed pump. You're going to have your refrigerator working a little extra hard as well, because you may not have the thermostat in your house set super low because of the costs of electricity. You don't want to have your house at 70, you may have it at 75 or 78, and this would cause the air conditioner, the refrigerator condenser to work a little bit harder because it's warmer. And then, of course, you have your other things that you're running, your washer and dryer, your lights. All of these things add up all together in your electric bill. So the pool pump is one component. Now, I will say this, that the variable speed pump will save you money over a single speed pump by far, and this will lower your overall energy use based on the kilowatt hours. So I'm not going to say that the VS pump will actually save you 80%, over a single speed pump. That's possible. That's very possible. But it's also based a lot on the kilowatt hours and how you're actually billed for your electricity usage. Now, if you're trying to sell a variable speed pump to a customer on your pool route, of course, you're going to talk about the energy savings in a more general way, that yes, the variable speed pump is going to save you money on your energy bill because it uses a lot less electricity when you're using it, or a lot less energy costs over the single speed pump. That's the best way to kind of explain it to them. You may have a script that you use all the time. My script is pretty simple. I'll tell the customer that the variable speed pump does 3 things for them. Number 1, it saves them money on their electric bill. Just keep it general like that, because you really can't get into the minutia. It's really difficult sometimes to separate it. Unless you have the VS pump on a separate breaker with its own meter, you would not be able to really tell how much it's saving based on the overall electricity use of that house itself. So number 1, it's going to save you money on an electricity bill. And second, it's of course going to be a little bit more cost than putting in a single speed pump again or replacing the motor. However, that cost is offset by how often you have to replace the variable speed pump motor or pump itself. And what I mean by this is I let the customers know that since it's not running at full speed all the time, it's kind of like if you had a car and you were driving it at 100 miles an hour everywhere. How long do you think that engine would last? Rather, if you had a car that you were driving 30 miles an hour, occasionally you went up to 65 or 70, that would last a lot longer. So I let them know that the VS pump is going to last for many, many years. In fact, I still have some first generation Pentair and Teleflow pumps on my route. They're really terrible as far as the interface and the errors that happened, especially when it loses its prime. It's one of those things where the alarm will flash. And if you have one of these first generations, you know what I'm talking about. It's one of the first and probably one of the, of course, best brands of VS pumps that were created initially. And they were everywhere. You would find them just about connected everywhere because they were technically the only VS pump when they first came out that was in wide usage. And I would say that, of course, you save energy. Again, you save on longevity. You don't have to replace it as often as a single speed pump. So it actually pays for itself in the longevity of the variable speed pump. And number three, it's a great way to ensure great water quality and to make sure the pool is running the correct amount of time. Now, this is kind of a convoluted answer, or actually, if you unpack it, it's pretty convoluted. If you just keep it simple for the customer and say that it's going to make it easy for me to set the timer and make sure the pool has proper circulation. So those 3 points are definitely true, and they're key to selling variable speed pumps: energy savings, longevity, and also water quality or water clarity. Now, the last one I'll unpack briefly for you here so you kind of get an idea what I'm talking about. The way the variable speed pump runs and the way that I set them, I use just 2 speeds, but of course you can use 3 or 4 different speeds. And what I like about the variable speed pump is that the timer is not an automatic little thing with dials on it. It's very modern. It is something that is very intuitive, so you can program it for multiple times during the day. You can program it to come on continuously with one program running after the other. So you have a lot more options than you have with a mechanical timer that's very common on a lot of older pools, which is the intermatic timer. Or if you're an old guy like me, you have some Paragon timers. They're the red and white timers. They don't work very well, and they were discontinued many years ago. And this is how the pools were controlled. Basically, the little on tripper would turn on the pool pump, and then the little off tripper would turn the pool pump off. Now, of course, you can add more on-off trippers if you wanted to on that dial and create different run times, but you're still limited to one speed, which is the 3450 RPMs. So let me unpack that a little bit. 3450 RPMs, or revolutions per minute, is the single speed run speed. So depending on your kilowatt hour rate would be the determination of how much electricity that single speed pump is using. But again, it's running at that full speed. Figure about 1400 to 1800 watts, depending on the horsepower of that motor per hour. So it's like having, anywhere from 15 to 1800 watt light bulbs on in your house all the time during the 6 or 8 hour runtime or 10-hour runtime of that pump. So it does use a significant amount of electricity. There's also what are known as dual speed pumps on the market. They're not very popular here, but they do have 2 speeds. One is about 1725 RPMs. The other is the full 3450 RPMs. So you have 2 speeds to choose from. They're not a bad investment. You just don't have a lot of control over them. I also find that they do have a lot of problems with the capacitors and the pump not priming or turning on for that reason. And I think variable speed pumps are a much better option. To me, you can program different speeds, and I think 1725 is kind of a low speed. I mean, you may want to run it at that speed, but technically most saltwater generators are not going to activate at that speed. And so this may hamper the savings and also being able to generate chlorine for the pool at the same time. So variable speed pumps are definitely the better option out there, and I would lean more towards that. Now, the thing is, with the variable speed pump, you are saving all of your electricity on the lower RPMs. So let's say you're running your low speed at 1800 RPMs, which is pretty standard. And what I set all my low speeds at, 1800 RPMs, will activate a saltwater generator, so that's not a problem. And I think that 1800 RPMs is probably the standard for the low speed for a variable speed pump. At that speed, you're using about 140 watts per hour, which is a far cry from the 1800 watts you're using with a single speed pump. Now, of course, this all boils down to kilowatt hours. If you're running your AC 24/7 and you're using a variable speed pump, you're not going to save a lot of money, because in my area, we're on a 3-tiered system. Once you reach the 3rd tier, the kilowatt hour per hour jumps really high. So it's a matter of conserving across all of your utilities, or all of the electronic devices in your home, I should say, or all the devices that use electricity over the whole household. So it's not like you can set the VS pump at 1800 RPMs and run your air conditioner for 4 hours longer than normal and think you're going to save money. It doesn't really work that way. So in reality, you can't really split this thinking. It's not like you can, use a variable speed pump and justify running other things longer because it's saving you money. The only way that you can correlate the savings of a variable speed pump is to compare it to what you would be doing with a single speed pump. In other words, you can't really justify a variable speed pump or even see the savings over the whole month of electricity use with all the other appliances in your house. The only way you can see this is by when you replace your single speed pump. If everything else is still the same, you can see the savings there, which is really hard to do because there's a lot of variables. Again, you may have a heat wave and run your AC longer than you did last year. So there's no way to compare last July's electricity bill with a single speed pump with this July's electricity bill with a variable speed pump, because there are other variables, pun intended, that are interfering with that. The only way, again, you can correlate the savings is with how much you can save over the single speed pump. Again, you can correlate the savings by comparing how much you're going to save over the single speed pump with a variable speed pump. And that basically is the only way you're going to be able to see any significant change in your energy use. The single speed pump, again, is running at 3450 RPMs. However many watts that is per hour can be compared to a variable speed pump running on low speed and medium speed. So for example, again, on low speed, you're using maybe 130, 140 watts with a VS pump. On medium speed, maybe 500 watts. But a single speed pump is going to be using a full 3450 RPMs or the full 1800 watts every hour it's running. So how do you set the variable speed pump to save electricity, or how does this work in general? I would say that it's really easy to see this because even though you're running the pump at 1800 RPMs, which is about half of 3450 RPMs, so the runtime is going to double, maybe even sometimes triple depending on how you want to set up your pool pump. But let's say it just doubles. So you're running your single speed pump for 8 hours a day. You would run your variable speed pump for 16 hours a day. And I'm just going to say that it's 140 watts running at 1800 RPMs, which is 240 watts for that 16-hour period. So basically that 16-hour runtime of the VS pump is about 1.5 hours runtime of the single speed pump. So it pays for itself just there. I mean, if you run your pool pump 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 56 hours. Let's just use 1800 watts as our baseline here. Let's say it's a 1.5 horsepower pump. That's 100,800 watts. So in that 1 week period, use 100,800 watts. Now this is not kilowatt hours because again, that's your total electricity usage and that's how they bill you. But if you're running your singles, so that's 100,000, let's just use that number. You're running your variable speed pump at 1800 RPMs for 16 hours a day, so 16 times 7, and then we times that by 140, that's 15,600 watts. So that's a 85% or 80% savings roughly. That's kind of how they get that savings when they calculate it, when you see it on the websites of the manufacturers. It's not totally untrue, but you can't really run your pool at 1800 RPMs and have a clean pool or have a pool with an automatic cleaner working in there properly, either a pressure or suction cleaner. So you're going to have a medium speed as well. But the medium speed, again, let's just say you're using 500 watts and you run it for 6 hours a day. So 6 times 7, which is 1 week, times 500, and that's 21,000. So you're still at about 36,000 watts of power usage during that week, which is way more than half of the single speed pump. So you can see how you can save at least half your energy costs easily. I'm going to go out and say that you can save 50% of your energy costs with a VS pump if you set the runtime correctly. And that's not stretching the truth. And over time, that's going to pay for itself. Now, secondary, I mentioned how a variable speed pump lasts longer than a single speed pump. The manufacturers are not making these things the way they used to. If you're an old-time pool guy like myself, you've had some Duraglass and Maxiglass pumps, stay-right pumps on your route. These things are old. They don't work well. They make a lot of noise. They don't really pull a lot of water anymore, but they're still running with the original motors on the back, which is crazy that you would have something last as long as this. I guess back east, you would have like the Hayward super pumps, and that would be equivalent to what we have here on the West Coast. A lot of people put in these stay-right Maxiglass and Duraglass pumps, and they're still running. At least most of them are still running. They may be on their second motor or maybe third motor or fourth motor now, because the original motor that lasted 20 years will not last 20 years any longer because the components are not the same, the manufacturing is not the same, they're not made as well, they're not really weatherproof, they're weather resistant, so they're going to, of course, wear out being outside in hot temperatures with rain. So they're not the best quality product. Now, of course, variable speed pumps also run at variable speeds, but they also use DC instead of AC, which will make these things last longer anyway, just by the fact of how the energy actually gets to the pump and how they actually utilize the way they actually run will make this pump last a lot longer. Most of them are totally enclosed, fan cooled, which makes them weatherproof. There's nothing that's exposed, so you don't see holes on the back that let the heat out and let elements in. And these are going to last a lot longer for that reason. But the main reason why they last longer is because the drive on back will control, again, the revolutions per minute, and it's not running at the full speed, and it's not going to wear these pumps out. And this is something that's going to save a lot of money over time. For example, if you put in a VS pump and it costs you $1,800, if you were to be putting in new motors every 3 or 4 years, which is typically what we've been doing lately out here because they don't last as long. Let's just say every 4 years. Let's just say every 5 years to put a new motor in, it costs you $500. So in 15 years, that's $1,500. The one VS pump is going to last 15 years. I wouldn't doubt it, especially with some of the first generation Pentair and Teleflows on my route still. So that goes to show they are very long lasting. So one of these is about three regular single speed pump replacements over a 15-year period, which is about the same price basically, but then you don't have the energy savings you get from a variable speed pump. So you see the big difference there. Also, you don't have the fail rate as much as a single speed pump. A lot of times you'll go to turn it on and you'll hear the humming, click, and you know that the capacitor is bad. Then you change the capacitor. Sometimes you have to change the capacitor every year. In some cases, I've had that happen when a lot of these motors are running hot. And sometimes the motor may only last 3 years. I've had this happen as well. So the equation kind of fluctuates, but basically the VS pumps are a lot less trouble. They're always going to turn on. I haven't had really much trouble with any of the brands or any of the different variable speed pumps. And they're going to outlast a single speed pump. At least the modern age single speed pump, I should say. They may not outlast a single speed pump that was made in the 80s or the 90s, but they certainly will outlast any modern single speed pump that's on the market today, because again, the components just aren't great. They just don't make them the way they used to. And that goes across all appliances. I have a brand new LG stove. It's probably about 2 years old, and I paid a bundle for it. I mean, they're super expensive now, but it has all the bells and whistles, and it doesn't have any fingerprints on there because it has a special coating. But already the LED clock has failed, and I can't read the time on there because the little electronics failed. But I had a stove for 20 years, old stove, where even like the buttons are wearing out, but the LED clock, it was working fine for 20 years. So again, it's not just pool pumps and motors, it's everything across the board is not made the way it used to be made. And last, I'll unpack how convenient it is to have a controller on the back. Now, if you're not connected to automation, you have a standalone VS pump. This is what I'm talking about. With automation, of course, even with a single speed pump, you can program in run times, but you can't program in different speeds, so that's one difference there. But with a standalone VS pump, I really like the fact that you can put programs in there, you can run it at certain speeds and times. It's leaps and bounds better than the intermatic timers with the on-off trippers. Those can move, those can fail. It's not the best way to run your pool. It's kind of like an old school way. And the VS pump with the timer, with the clock, with the way to program it, sometimes you can even look at it on your phone app, depending on which VS pump you have. It's really great to have the ability to program a real timer. It's just very modern and easy and simple. And to program in different run times, you can have your pool come on at 8 in the morning at 1800 RPMs. You can run it for 5 hours like that if you want. Then you can go to a higher speed of 2600 at lunchtime to see the waterfall effect. And then you can put it back down to a low speed later. And then you can have it come on again at an even higher speed for the spillway or maybe some other water features at nighttime. There's so many possibilities, and it's really great to be able to program in different speeds. Most pumps will allow you to program at least 4 different speeds and at least 4 different run times. Those are the basic VS pumps. Others will let you program in like 8 schedules. You don't really need more than 2, in my opinion, but the fact that you can run it at different speeds and different times is really something that's convenient. And another great reason to have a variable speed pump. A lot of the newer ones, like the Jandy Flow Pro, have auxiliary relays in the back, so you can connect a saltwater generator or a pressure side cleaner and have those turn on with the timer depending on which RPM you have it set for. So it's really great and it's really modern, and it's all you're going to need at your pool equipment is a VS pump with the drive on back with the timer that's built in, and maybe with some auxiliaries for your saltwater system or pressure cleaner, booster pump. And I really think that there's really no reason not to get a VS pump. Yes, the price point is higher, but it's going to pay for itself in many ways. I just went over 3 main ways that it pays for itself. And I think this is an easy sell to your customers out there. If you just focus on these 3 points, you can easily sell them on a VS pump. And these 3 points are actually true. And it's not something that you're making up. And it's something that's really going to help the customer or yourself, if you're looking for a variable speed pump, save money on your electricity usage overall. I really like them. I have 2 on my pool pad right now. I have 1 VS pump for my water features and another VS pump for the main pool. And I would probably never go back to a single speed pump once you go to VS pump. There's no reason to. They're just made so well and they're very long lasting. If you're looking for other podcasts I recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, click on the podcast icon. Then there'll be a drop-down menu of other podcasts I've recorded. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless.